Hurricane symbol, the tropical storm symbol, and another tropical storm that could eventually spread moisture up towards Southern California, maybe break some of that heat there. Cold front, though, is moving through.
Every day promoting excellence.
Hello, I'm Gino Malone, Chairman of Mercer County Muscular Dystrophy Association. Along with me is my good friend Chris Ford. We're here to invite you, Mercer County, to the annual Jerry Lewis Labor Day Telethon at Kathmandu on Trenton's waterfront on Sunday, September the 6th from 11 to 7. Along with our variety show, we'll be featuring a Fun for All carnival.
Come support us at Kathmandu and have some fun.
Unexpected weather can really mess up your day, and preparing people for it is our business. Business is good.
Right now, it's your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
Good morning. It's time now for Storm Watch and your tropical update, which are sponsored by the Home Depot. We have the very latest information now coming in regarding Tropical Storm Earl. This is as of the 7 o'clock advisory. It is now centered 180 miles southwest of Destin, Florida. Still, though, packing winds of 60 miles an hour, so still a very strong tropical storm. And now its forward speed has increased somewhat. Now this forward speed is up to about 12 miles per hour, so continues to work its way towards the northeast, and we're expecting that northeastward movement to continue for today. Now, one of the biggest concerns that we have regarding this tropical system is that it will likely dump some very heavy amounts of rain. As we check out what's happening right now, we have hurricane watches and warnings in effect. Hurricane warnings, though, right now from Morgan City, Louisiana, and extending eastbound over towards Destin, Florida. Then east and west of those areas, we have tropical storm watches and warnings in effect. Now, something that we have to keep in mind is that we'll have some very heavy rain spreading across the Gulf coastal area and some stiff winds, too. So if you haven't already done so, now is certainly the time to start to hasten those preparations just in case we do have a landfalling system here. Start boarding up your windows and start stocking up on supplies because we might see a fairly strong system working its way on shore for today. Again, we have locally heavy rain already trying to creep its way on shore. And we're seeing the rain now kind of picking up around Panama City, some moderate rainfall there. For the most part, the heaviest rain, though, continues to be back over the open waters, but that will eventually change and that moisture will eventually shift on shore. So again, watching out for some heavy downpours and certainly some very treacherous traveling conditions across the Gulf coastal areas for today. Now, besides Tropical Storm Earl, we have another system, Hurricane Danielle. Luckily, though, this one has made the turn and it continues to pull back over the open waters. Although it has been giving Bermuda kind of a glancing blow, and at least earlier this morning we had some strong gusty winds at times approaching 50 miles an hour around the Bermuda area. And at this point, tropical storm warnings remain posted for the island of Bermuda. Here's our latest satellite picture, and we're seeing Danielle again pulling out towards the open waters, so poses no threat whatsoever towards the lower 48. Although we are feeling some slight effects, though, from Danielle because we have been seeing some big swells right along the coastal region. So be really careful today. If you're planning on swimming or boating, you might see some big seas and certainly some dangerous riptides up and down the eastern seaboard. Stay tuned. We'll have more updates regarding Tropical Storm Earl, and we'll also see how Earl could be affecting your forecast for today. That's all coming up.
Some along the Gulf Coast batten down hatches and brace for whatever Tropical Storm Earl may bring. A live report from the storm's potential path next on Weather Center.
This program was sponsored by the Home Depot.
We have the how-to clinics where we show the customer how to do the project themselves.
After doing it for the first time, they feel a lot more comfortable with it.
They get involved, they get pumped, they take notes, they come to the Home Depot, they get the products, they're taught how to do it, and they go home and they do it, and they're like, wow, I did it, and the Home Depot showed me how.
Keep power outages in check with a dependable home generator from Generac. They come with a 2-year warranty, and they're available at the guaranteed low price every day at the Home Depot.
Much, Mike, and good morning, everyone. We have another tropical system to concern ourselves with. This is Tropical Storm Earl, and the concern is not over the mid-Atlantic states this time, but it is over the central and eastern Gulf states. Satellite picture of Earl is rather, again, impressive as far as the eastern part of the Gulf is concerned, but a very distinct line of drier, cloud-free conditions swinging through New Orleans. So it looks like New Orleans, who was under the gun yesterday, is on the good side of the storm, so to speak. Latest coordinates from the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida, as of the 7 a.m. Central Time observation. Earl was centered at 28.5 north, 88.5 west, or approximately 180 miles southwest of Destin, Florida. Maximum sustained winds are at about 60 miles per hour. It is continuing to move to the northeast, picked up a little forward speed, about 12 miles per hour. Central pressure at 996 millibars at the present time. Joined now by Weather Channel's hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons. And Dr. Lyons, we're watching the storm. Everyone in New Orleans is feeling a lot better this morning, but there's other areas of concern in the Gulf.
Yeah, that is correct. It continues to move to the northeast, and most of the bad weather is still offshore. The strongest winds are offshore. Most of the bad weather and the strongest winds are east of the center as well. And so if you're west of the center out in the Gulf, the winds are really not too bad, 15, 20 knots, 25 miles an hour at best.
Yeah, well, we still have warnings out for parts of the Gulf Coast of course, especially the eastern Gulf. Hurricane warnings out from Morgan City, Louisiana to Destin, Florida. And then from Destin, Florida, east to Apalachicola, tropical storm warnings are in effect, while from Morgan City to Cameron, Louisiana, they report tropical storm watches presently in effect. But we could see an eastward shift with all these watches and warnings very quickly, depending upon the movement of Earl, and it appears to be moving more of an easterly component this last observation.
Yeah, this upper trough in here is seeming to pushing it farther eastward. We originally had the advisories coming up here, and now it's moving over here. It continues to move generally toward the east-northeast. The center is actually on the east, the west side of most of this thunderstorm activity, and it's an elongated one, sort of sitting more or less in this general area. And most of the strong winds are out in here in the thunderstorm activity, anywhere from 40 to 50 miles per hour. We have one ship out there that reported hurricane-force winds, but that's unconfirmed yet. We're going to try to track that down to make sure.
We look at the radar out of the eastern Gulf, and you can see once again, as you mentioned, most of the heavy weather is offshore. Although as we close on in on the radar out of Panama City, Florida, you can see some of the heavier weather beginning to slide in towards Port St. Joe and Apalachicola in the Big Bend of Florida.
And in these rain bands, we're getting winds of 30 miles per hour or more, and local higher gusts in those thunderstorms. So people along the Florida panhandle there should be bracing for some pretty nasty weather the next 3 to 9 hours.
And it really looks like, again, Florida may bear the brunt of what this tropical system has to offer, because if you look back over towards Mobile Bay, not showing any radar echoes whatsoever, and back farther west of that, Pascagoula, New Orleans, things not looking too bad at all. But the rain, as we mentioned, could be heavy, so flash flood watches are posted throughout this portion of the central Gulf, and they may be extended into northern portions of Florida and parts of the west coast a little bit later on. The rainfall could be locally heavy, and upwards of 6 inches of rain between now and midnight tonight. It's it's got a good environment to feed the moisture off the Gulf of Mexico, which is warm and moist, and it's not moving extremely rapidly at the present time.
Yeah, really moving 10 miles an hour, that would be conducive to a peak rainfall amount of about 10 inches along the coastline. So 6 inches plus of our estimates, pretty fair, and if it slows down, you could get a lot more, but right now the trend is reversed. It seems to be speeding up, which is good news, so that you'll get some rain, but not necessarily some horrible flooding unless it does something rather dramatic here in the next 6 hours.
Now, what about the folks in the panhandle there of Florida and even the western parts of Florida, Zeta and Cross City, Cedar Key, even on down towards the Tampa area? What should they be doing, you think, at this point in time?
Well, if they're along the coastal zone and low-lying area where water can affect them, they probably, if their emergency managers have not had an evacuation order for them, they should be taking precautions there, because there's going to be some pretty big surf coming in there within the next 30, well, actually it's already coming in, but it's going to get higher in the next 6 hours or so.
Yeah, probably the worst thing to do is sit and do nothing. Sit on your hands and wait. Make your preparations. Thank you, Dr. Steve Lyons, our hurricane expert, as we continue to monitor the progress of Tropical Storm Earl in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. We'll have another complete update coming up on the half hour, but you can check in on the latest with Earl and your backyard weather anytime on the internet at weather.com. And now with the rest of the nation's story on this second day of September, we go back to the studio and Mike Motley.
Thanks, Bruce. Well, elsewhere in the country, the heat returns today.
Well, the winds are picking up along the shore, and Tropical Storm Earl is now a hurricane, and it's whipping the Gulf Coast with heavy rains. Good morning and welcome to Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso. For the latest on the new hurricane, let's go to Bruce Edwards in the Forecast Center. Bruce?
Thank you, Mark, and good morning, everyone. That's right, you heard correctly. The new hurricane, the third one of the season, has just been upgraded to a hurricane, Hurricane Earl, in the northern Gulf of Mexico. Here's the latest information from the National Hurricane Center. And as of the update, let's see. Well, no, this is, there it is. There's the latest information. As of 10 a.m. Central Time, Earl was centered at 28.8 north, 87.9 degrees west, or approximately 140 miles southwest of Destin, Florida. Its top sustained winds now have increased to 80 miles per hour, and it is moving to the northeast again at 14. For a short time, it had a bit more of an easterly jog. Now the direction of movement northeast at about 14, and the central pressure has fallen off about 4 millibars, now down to 990 millibars, the central pressure at the present time. We have a look at the warnings now that remain in effect. Even though this is a hurricane, the warnings that were in effect prior to this official upgrading remain in effect. They haven't changed any at all. So from Pascagoula, Mississippi, eastbound to the mouth of the Suwannee River in Florida, hurricane warnings remain in effect. And from the mouth of the Suwannee south to Ancelot Keys in Florida, we have a tropical storm warning remaining into effect. Now, the head of the Florida, chief of the preparedness and response for Florida's emergency management has been very, very busy this morning, and he is cautioning residents to pay very close attention to the latest updates from the officials in the state of Florida.
The residents need to be ready to move to higher ground immediately when those evacuation orders are given. Other residents need to be prepared for some gusty winds, and what we're really getting concerned about now is possibly some heavy rain over some of our state as well as into Georgia that drains back down on our rivers.
Now, there's a couple of phone numbers you can call for the latest information. Florida residents can call 1-800-342-3557 for the latest road closings and evacuation orders. That's 1-800-342-3557. And for hearing impaired Florida residents can call 1-800-226-4329. That number again, 1-800-226-4329. We'll be giving you those numbers again. We have Dr. Steve Lyons, a hurricane expert, joining us now. And Dr. Lyons, with the upgrade now, we do have ourselves a hurricane. And as we've been saying all morning, it's not really the west side, but the east side of the storm that's the powerful punch.
Yeah, the hurricane hunters are in the east side right now. They found an 88 knot, that's about close to 100 mile an hour wind at flight level. And that's what prompted the Hurricane Center to upgrade it to a hurricane. Of course, it's that east side that's the dangerous side, and we've been telling you all morning that the warnings are for hurricane warnings, not for tropical storm, and you should be prepared for hurricane winds. And now the system continues to move on to the northeast at a fairly good clip. The circulation center's roughly in that general area and moving generally in this area as well. And so the east side of the system and all the way out into this sector in here, you can expect some pretty nasty weather the next 12 hours or so. At that current speed, it would be on shore about 10 hours. If it continues at that speed, the thing about that is it may not continue at that speed. And the other thing is that hurricane force winds could reach the coast before landfall.
Right.
So don't pay attention too much to the landfall, but pay attention to the overall system.
That's right. And if you live in an area prone to flooding and a low-lying area, you should probably take precautions. And again, we have those phone numbers so you know who gets the evacuation order and who does not. Take a look at the radar, and the radar has been fairly active, showing some significant squalls pushing towards the coast, especially around Port St. Joe and Apalachicola.
A couple of bands forming in here, and those are going to be probably gusting to tropical storm force out there. Of course, keep in mind there's going to be very high surf there along the coast, 15 to 20 feet. Possible as high as 20 feet, probably 12 to 15 is more reasonable, and some storm surge superimposed on that, and some heavy rain likely the next 12 hours.
Well, this is the radar out of Tallahassee, Florida, and again it shows the heavier cells right around Apalachicola, Florida. They picked up a little over ½ an inch already this morning, and still some heavier squalls continue to move through, and the rain has been rather heavy even in Tallahassee for that matter, so the hills of the Big Bend of Florida catching some pretty significant moisture.
Yes, and we've seen quite a bit of lightning in some of these yellow and red areas that you see on your screen here, so be very, very careful. If you're preparing out there, try to do it before any heavy rain gets there, and try not to do it in lightning. Do not be on a ladder on your roof when lightning is out. That's
right. And speaking of heavy rains, you could see locally 6 inches or more of rain between now and midnight tonight, and once that tropical moisture starts, it's going to continue for quite a while as it continues to work on shore. We're watching this movement. Again, we were most concerned with Louisiana yesterday, but again the emphasis has shifted to the east, and that may have caught some Florida residents by surprise, because all the talk into yesterday evening was, well, New Orleans, Central Gulf Coast, and no talk of western Florida, but now this is a potential threat to them.
Yes, the uncertainty with forecasting tropical storms rather than hurricanes that are in an environment that has different winds at different levels is oftentimes very, very difficult. This has been a very difficult forecast to make, and of course you've got to be ready at all times. Whether you think it's going to come at you or not, you should be ready ahead of time. Now you can see here this upper level flow in here is sort of pushing the system off to the northeast. However, there is some possibility that's going to slow down over the next 12 hours. And looking at the latest radar, it doesn't look like it's really continuing on that northeast track as fast as it had a little bit earlier. So that could prolong some of the rain there. So be monitoring this very, very carefully. Anybody along the Florida Panhandle, even into the Mississippi area as well.
We want to remind, again, all residents of Florida of a couple of important phone numbers they can get information on for the latest road closing and evacuation orders. 1-800-342-3557. And for the hearing impaired Florida residents, the number you can call is 1-800-226-4329. And we'll be showing those numbers again throughout the course of the morning, so you can get the latest information on that. Dr. Lyons, thank you very much, and thank you for joining us. A reminder, a complete update on Bonnie on the half hour all morning and into the afternoon, and as long as Bonnie is a threat to the continental U.S., and you can find out, or excuse me, Earl, not Bonnie. I'm still a week behind time. And the latest information is also available on the internet at weather.com. Now Mark Mancuso has the latest on what else is going on across the country. Mark?
All right, thank you, Bruce. Heat, that's a major factor in the south and west, while the rain is appearing in parts of the northeast. Satellite picture really shows us the scene here. We can see 1, 2, 3 tropical systems. Of course, in the Atlantic, we have Danielle. That has just brushed by Bermuda with tropical storm force winds. Earl, a problem for northwest Florida in the Gulf. And in the Pacific, this is Isis. And this is now forecast to head its way right up the Gulf of California, and that could eventually be a problem.
Your neighborhood. The work they'll be doing will improve the reliability and overall performance of your cable service and enable us to offer you advanced communications options in the near future. As this work is being done, you may experience temporary interruptions. We will do our best to keep this inconvenience to a minimum. And later this year, look for our brand new channel lineup. Thank you for choosing Comcast, everything you connect with.
Every day is new. We tell you about the weather right now. How will it affect where you're headed? What about your plans? People count on us to get them through the day. I love that.
Right now, it's your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
And your tropical update begins with a look at Hurricane Earl. Here's the hurricane symbol. Earl turning northeastward at 14 miles an hour through the North Gulf of Mexico. 28.8 north, 87.9 west. And the center of circulation 140 miles southwest of Destin, Florida. Pressure 990 millibars. Hurricane hunters have been investigating the storm throughout the morning. They found strongest winds on the southeast side of the circulation center. So the strongest winds aren't right near the center. They seem to be a little bit farther out. So this is not purely a tropical system, as it does have some other ingredients here that would not make this a pure tropical system, but nonetheless still high winds and very heavy rains taking aim on northwest Florida. Hurricane warnings and tropical storm warnings are in effect. And of course the complete update on Earl here coming at the top and the bottom of the hour in your Weather Center segments. But still, you can see your circulation here. Notice some drier air coming on in, so this kind of tells us a tip-off that it's not a pure tropical system, but as mentioned, very heavy rains and high winds. Reconnaissance aircraft did pick up winds well over 80 miles an hour here off to the southeast of the center of circulation. Here you can see Danielle. That has made the right-hand turn. Out to sea it goes. The wind's still 80 miles an hour here. Movement northeast at 25. Tropical storm warnings continue in Bermuda. They'll probably be dropped soon as the hurricane pulls away. But earlier this morning, we did have winds to tropical storm force in Bermuda. The winds were blowing 40 miles an hour sustained. And we did have wind gusts to 50 miles an hour. Bermuda right down here, that little black speck there. And there you can see the hurricane. This is where you have your real high winds. So all this pulling away from Bermuda. And checking on Bermuda, winds are now down to 25 miles an hour. Strong tropical wave coming in through the Caribbean. Hurricane hunters are investigating this area right here. Did see a little swirl move its way through Martinique and St. Lucia. So a weak area low pressure on the strong tropical wave. And this strong tropical wave dropped to 2 to 3 inches of rain in the Central Islands the past 24 hours. Latest radar shows showers moving through the Virgin Islands. This will be monitored for signs of becoming a depression in the next 12 to 24 hours. Lastly, in the Pacific, Isis is moving northward at 8 miles an hour, 70 mile an hour winds. Position of the center just off to the east of Cabo San Lucas, where we've seen heavy rains and strong winds out of the northwest this morning. Tropical storm warnings here up the Gulf of California. Bad news is this storm could continue to move up through the Gulf of California and eventually threaten the southwest with heavy rains towards the weekend.
As Hurricane Earl churns toward land, coastal residents are bracing for the worst, hoping for the best. More on the storm and where it may be headed next on Weather Center.
Packages are Christian Huff's business. So every morning, in the name of feeling better, he opens one labeled Chiquita. Full of nutrition, it helps deliver what he needs to keep going and keep stopping. Chiquita, quite possibly the world's perfect food.
We think an SUV should be less status symbol and more truck. So you'll find a truck-based steel frame under every Jimmy to give it backbone and make it as solid and true as a GMC truck. And right now, get this solid deal. Buy a Jimmy and get $2,500 cash back during the GMC Summer Sell Down. Your GMC dealer's got plenty of Jimmys on hand. But hurry, because while backbone will always be standard on Jimmy, this great deal won't. Jimmy by GMC.
Hi, have you tried
Cinnamon Graham cereal, a favorite at my house for years.
Yeah, but it hasn't been around that